Hi, Sneha. Hi. Hi, Stacy.
Hi, Tara. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. I think Sneha wanted us to get on so she can try out her video and sound. Let's make sure it works.
That's right. I saw that email. Looks like she's there.
She's there. I don't know if the sound is working. That's not good. We'll figure it out in the next 6 minutes, hopefully.
It's okay. I can email her questions, or we'll do the text box. Tara, I don't know if you spoke with Raul yesterday, but we were thinking the Q&A box for questions. Does that work for you?
Yeah, I think oh, you want the Q&A box. I didn't
Well, whatever works for you. Is there going to be somebody who can sort of feed us questions? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be on the chat. So at the beginning, Samira Mehta is going to introduce the two of you. So that'll happen, once everyone joins on. And then I'll ask him to note that, or I can even note it. If you have any questions for either Stacy or Sneha, please put them in the chat box, and then I'll forward those to you. So you don't have to, either we can put it in an email or I can send it to you via Zoom, whatever's your preference.
I'm thinking send it via Zoom, probably be easier for me to, with the different screens I have open, probably work the best.
That sounds good.
Awesome. Hi, Sneha.
Hey guys, so I have to move because this is what happens in the window is behind me. So let me see if I can do this.
I'm facing the same thing. I've got light issues as well. The sun is moving across these windows. I keep like running from them.
Yeah, I can move to my husband's side of it's just really plain, but I guess that's okay. That's probably better. So there's not a glare. Okay.
All right. Yeah, that looks good.
Okay. I keep telling him to put stuff on his wall.
Actually, the plane works. The plane,
Yeah.
the plane works. It's fine. Okay, we've got a couple people in the waiting room, but I'm going to wait until 12 to admit them. I'm just hoping that Samir, who's going to introduce the two of you, will come on first. And then Sneha and Stacy, as I was telling Stacy a minute ago, I'll be monitoring the Zoom for Q&A purposes, and then I'll push them towards Stacy and you, Sneha, if you want, or just to Stacy, whoever wants it, and then we can go from there. That works.
Sounds good.
All right.
I've got actually one of these lights. Oh, okay, that's better. And I'm assuming my computer, now that it's unplugged, you know what? I should try to plug it back in. Give me a second.
The sun needs to just move.
I hate not wanting the sun to be there, but it definitely causes an issue on Zoom calls.
Agreed. Yeah.
Sure does. It sure does. So I think we're going to have, hopefully we'll have about 41 people on this, 40 to 40, like hopefully at least 30 people. Usually, there's Zoom fatigue, so sometimes a few drop out, but we've got 5 in the waiting room, so it's good.
Excellent.
Excellent. Okay, now, and you were just breaking up, Tara, so I don't know if that's me or, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
or is it?
You're a little bit broken up.
Yeah.
I'm going to let Rahul in. Okay.
Okay. I hope that doesn't happen again.
What just
Can you
happened?
hear me? I was like breaking up. I had to switch locations in my office or my home office because the light is coming from behind me. Okay, can you hear me okay now?
Yep,
Yeah, all right.
you sure can. That sounds good. All right, everyone, it's about 12 or like about 1 o'clock Eastern. I'm gonna let people in and we can get started. What I'll do is I'll ask people to mute themselves.
Sounds good.
All right.
I hope my dog cooperates.
We live in the world of Zoom, Sneha. All dogs are welcome.
Welcome. I know. Too many Amazon deliveries. She goes crazy.
It's an exciting time to be a dog.
Okay. We'll get started in just a few minutes. Let's just give it about 1 or 2 more minutes just to get everyone into the meeting, and then we can get started. Okay, Samira, you want to get started?
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for joining us today in our latest edition of the Saba Corporate Counsel College. Today we have the pleasure of having a chai chat with Sneha Desai and facilitated through Stacy Sutton. And I'll give a little bit of background on them. My name is Samir Mehta, by the way. I am the president of Saba North America. And we're thrilled to have Sneha and Stacy participate in this chai chat. Sneha Desai is the Deputy General Counsel of BASF Corporation, and she heads up litigation at BASF out of Florham Park, New Jersey. In her role, she has responsibility for managing the company's litigation portfolio throughout North America with a team of attorneys and legal assistants, and oversees litigation-related policies and procedures. She also sponsors the legal department's diversity team and is responsible for its outside counsel diversity program. And on the other hand, end of the conversation, the chai chat today, we are lucky to have Stacy Sutton, who's a shareholder at Carlton Fields. Stacy is an experienced commercial litigator who focuses her practice on business dispute resolution. She has represented Fortune 500 clients in a variety of industries and through a wide range of significant state and federal litigation and arbitration matters, including representing wireless carriers in litigation and arbitration involving breach of contract claims, IP claims, customer issues, and other matters. And that's probably enough for me to chat because I think you're more excited to hear Stacy and Sneha talk. So thank you very much for joining us and for having this conversation. Stacy.
Samir, thank you so much. And thank you all for having us today. Sneha and I are very excited to join you. And to sort of to follow up on what Samir just said, I am actually with Carlton Fields. I'm the chair of our firm's telecom litigation group. I am a litigator, and most importantly for today, I've had the distinct pleasure of being a co-clerk with Sneha when we both clerked for Justice James Coleman, retired from the New Jersey Supreme Court. And we had the opportunity to work on some of the very novel and interesting issues that court is famous for taking up. So, hello, Sneha.
Hi, Stacy. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I thought, Sneha, it might be helpful just to start up really briefly about your background. Where did you grow up?
I'm a Jersey girl. Can't you tell? I grew up in northern New Jersey in Bergen County, and lived in New Jersey pretty much my whole life except for college and law school. And then when I worked, but always in the tri-state area. And actually, Stacey, before we start and before I forget, I did want to thank Saba for inviting me to this chai chat. I feel bad I don't have any chai with me. I should have, but I actually don't eat until the afternoon, so I don't have anything to drink. But I also wanted to wish those on the call who celebrate a very happy Diwali, and really excited for the next few days and a really festive Diwali season. So
wonderful, and I second your wishes to all. So Sneha, where did you go to undergrad and to law school?
So undergrad was Villanova University, right outside of Philadelphia, home of the Wildcats, national basketball champions. And then I went right to law school at the University of Pennsylvania Law School, right in Philly. I refuse to, it's been renamed, and I refuse to call it by its new name.
Sounds about right. When you were in law school, we all had our aspirations of what we would do after law school. What did you think you would be doing?
I think I always knew kind of early on in law school that I wanted to be a litigator. Back when I was in college, maybe even later, kind of the latter part of high school, my dad, who, as many can relate, was an immigrant from India and really had, kind of really strict ideas of what I should do with my life and a future career. And he gave me kind of three options of what I could do with my life. It was either be a doctor, an engineer like he was, or a lawyer. I don't know, we didn't know any lawyers, so I don't know why he thought being a lawyer was such a great profession, but I quickly ruled out the other two. And, always kind of thought that certainly being a lawyer was a good profession for me. And then early on, just, enjoying kind of the litigation part of it, the oral advocacy, the writing, the, kind of looking at precedent and, trying to figure out how to be persuasive. So, I always wanted to be a litigator early on. I don't think anyone goes to law school dreaming of being a corporate litigator. I did have aspirations to maybe do public service work. And then, like many of us, you graduate law school with a lot of debt and you need a way to pay that off. And so, I clerked with you for Justice Coleman right after law school, and then just went right to work in kind of for big law firms. And I've kind of now, 20 plus years later, have found a way to give back in terms of public service and pro bono, but spent the better part of my career just kind of doing corporate litigation.
So Sneha, when you went into private practice, how long were you at the firm? You were in New York, right?
I was in New York. Yeah, I was at a firm called Patterson Belknap, Webb and Tyler in New York, and it's a full service firm, but it did a lot of litigation, which is really what drew me to the firm. And it was, at the time, maybe it had two offices, but pretty much everyone was in New York. And I liked that kind of smaller feel. And they did lots of interesting litigation. So I was there right after I clerked until I came to BASF, actually. So for about 8 years or so.
What made you decide to go in-house and why BASF?
So going in-house, it's kind of, I think, a similar thought process that a lot of people have, right? I was at a law firm for a long time, kind of didn't know if I wanted to stay and kind of do the grind to become a partner. I looked over that horizon. I left as an 8th year, so I kind of was getting there, and I looked over that horizon to a lot of junior partners at the firm and friends who were, partners at other firms, and just didn't think that was for me really long term. That coincided with the fact that I had my first son in 2006, went on maternity leave for 6 months, came back to the firm. They were great. The firm was, wonderful and supportive, and I came back part-time. But I was living in New Jersey, commuting to New York. And so I already kind of was like, I don't want to keep commuting to New York. Let me find something in New Jersey. Thought about some law firms in New Jersey, and then just thought I should explore the in-house career path as well. It, offered up, I think, some things that were really interesting from a perspective of kind of devoting yourself to one client and helping one client, solve its problems. And so I explored that. And frankly, BASF, I wasn't looking really, I hadn't really looked that much. And I got a cold call from a recruiter, had never heard of BASF before, actually. The firm did a little bit of work for BASF. I came to find out I never did. And so I'm glad I kind of took that leap to go in-house at BASF, even though I was really unfamiliar with the company, not as familiar with the industry. It was a chemical manufacturing industry, not necessarily the sexiest of industries, the way pharma and some other firm clients were. But I'm glad I made that leap.
Did you have any concerns about the transition?
Yeah, I think, I didn't, my biggest concern at the time was actually, we were on the verge of going to trial in a case that I had worked on from the day I started at the firm. And so this was one of those mega cases, and it was going to go to trial. I was the lead associate on the case, I was going to have a great experience. And so part of me felt guilty about leaving the trial team right before trial was going to start. And that a lot of my kind of anxiety or regrets around, thinking about leaving was about that. Of course, my last day at the firm, the case settled. There were settlement discussions the whole time that I wasn't aware of. And so that, it totally worked out. I don't have any regrets initially leaving a law firm to go in-house. As my career has progressed, there are definitely things that I miss about the private practice of law, and we can get into that a little bit later.
Okay. All right. So, so you joined BASF. What was your first position there?
I came in as a kind of individual attorney, counsel, I believe. I think that was the title, just counsel, litigation, handling a docket. I replaced someone who retired. And so the docket was a lot of the company's material, quote unquote, material litigation, things that, had a high dollar value or spanned multiple business units. The way we're set up at BASF is that we have individual lawyers who support the different business units. And so if there's some litigation that is more corporate wide or spans more than one business unit, it kind of went into a different category. And that's a job that I had. And I reported at the time to the head of litigation.
How big was your department at that time?
Just the litigators?
Yes.
Same as it is now, 14 years later. It was the head of the department, who was my boss, and 4 other litigators.
So then how did your career progress? What were the steps to getting to Deputy General Counsel for litigation?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar, I would imagine, in a lot of in-house legal departments, right? It's like this, right? The general counsel sits on top, and there's different levels of management. And so I started in early 2008, and after about a year, my boss left the company. And so that role kind of went unfilled for a while. And our general counsel at the time was a litigator himself. And so, there wasn't a need to fill that role right away. And so it was kind of several years of taking on gradually more and more responsibility. Right after my boss left, I ended up being responsible for managing the team of legal assistants at the time who had previously reported directly to her. So I did that for a few years. And then the litigation group was reorganized. And at that point, there was an opening or, a need to replace the actual head of litigation. And that was, I think, 4 or 5 years ago now. And so I applied for the job, as did others in the department, and was able to get that promotion.
Was it when the position was filled, was it going to always be filled from within, or were they also looking outside of the department, maybe outside the company?
I think for that particular role, I think they just looked internally, because there were, a few of us internally who, I think were good candidates. There are definitely, we've had other openings that I have been involved, as part of maybe the interview team or, involved in hiring at a management level where we've had, for example, retained a recruiter to recruit externally, and we've done that. So it really, really does depend on, I think, whether or not the general counsel and, whoever else is in charge at the time, thinks that there are viable candidates internally for a role, whether or not I think you always have to post it, at least at BASF, you have to post it internally for sure. And then whether or not you post it externally, I think it depends on, how wide a net you may want to cast.
Got it. So as you were going, from one position to the next, were there things that you had to, or categories of things you had to learn or frankly unlearn from the previous, position you were holding?
Yeah, it was, it was interesting because when I came into the job, there was a job description, the initial job of counsel, there was a job description that said, prior experience in different areas like antitrust and product liability and other things were preferred. And I think a lot of times things like that kind of turn people off or sway people away from applying for a job because you think, well, I don't have that experience, or I don't have exactly every single bullet point that they're looking for. And now that I'm on the other side where I do the hiring in-house, those job descriptions, at least from my experience, which is limited, of course, to BASF, are kind of your, if you had an ideal candidate, it's everything that you want one person to have. But at least I know I understand full well, hiring for someone in my group, you may not get someone who has every single thing that you're looking for, especially in terms of experience, especially in-house for a litigator, for example. We kind of want a jack of all trades, right? The way, like I said, we assign litigators is to a business unit. And so if you're the litigator assigned to a business unit, you are handling and responsible for everything that every litigation or dispute related, matter that business unit encounters. So it could be something as small as a slip and fall that happens at that site. It could be, obviously a commercial issue with a supplier or a vendor. Could be a antitrust issue. It could be a government investigation. It could be a patent litigation, a patent issue, which we share with the IP group at BASF. And so really it runs a gamut. So, there's obviously some background that someone will bring to the table, but there's very few folks at law firms who are specializing in all of that, right? At law firms, we tend to specialize in, a few areas or one or two areas. You're not a jack of all trades litigator at a law firm, but you kind of have to be that at a lot of in-house, in a lot of in-house legal departments. So I didn't let that sway me when I, kind of applied for the job, and, I explained it and said, I don't necessarily have that experience, but I'm a quick study and I'm a fast learner, and I can learn that. And you also have experts that you're hiring, right? As in-house counsel, there are some legal departments that do their own litigation. They actually go into court and do their own litigation. We don't do that. We're not staffed that way. That's not our model. So we are hiring outside counsel. And so when I need an expert in antitrust or FCPA or, you know, whatever other issue, that's who we're going out and hiring. And so, you know, to grow into the role that I have now, I didn't necessarily need to develop any real substantive expertise. Obviously, it helped that I had a lot of broad different matters that I was handling at BASF. But again, a lot of my job is kind of finding those experts externally and managing that aspect.
So we're going to get more into your day-to-day duties now, but I do want to ask you, so how much of your time, so really you're not doing much litigating at this point, right? Like you don't really have your hands in a lot of litigation, do you?
No, and well, so it's, I guess, you know, it depends on what you define as litigating, right? It's very obviously different than when I was at a law firm, and that is part of what I miss. I kind of miss being hands-on. It's hands-on in a different way, right? It's hands-on mostly with our internal clients. It's hands-on with our law firm, where, you know, obviously we are, you know, constantly having strategy meetings and discussions and making sure that the outside counsel is, you know, really understands our end goals and is aligned with what we want our strategy to be. It's reviewing drafts when I can. You know, I don't always have the time to do that, but now it's a lot of internal administration, you know, kind of budgeting, you know, managing the docket as a whole, reporting internally, externally to auditors, you know, dealing with insurance and all sorts of things like that, but not, you know, I definitely don't devote as much time to the actual matters unless they're really, really big, right? Those are the ones I get more involved in. But the day-to-day, certainly I'm working a lot with my team, obviously. I have a team of 4 litigators, 4 paralegals, an e-discovery kind of legal operations manager, and admin for the whole group. And so working very closely with my team and other colleagues at BASF to make sure that we are managing that risk.
So what would be a normal day for Sneha now in your current position?
There's definitely no normal day. It changes. I mean, just 2 days ago, we got an email that there was a TRO hearing in Harris County, Texas, the next day. So whatever I was doing at the time gets dropped, right? And then you have to kind of figure out, okay, you know, counsel lined up and, you know, internal reporting, managing with communications because there's going to be press on this, and making sure we have a standby statement, making sure colleagues and, you know, the legal department management in Germany kind of know what's going on, especially if something's going to get picked up in the press. So it really is, you know, there's always a handful of cases that are busy that you're kind of managing. And, you know, some of the bigger cases, we have weekly meetings that I'll take part in just to kind of stay in the loop on what's going on. And then there are internal or even external projects, right, that you're kind of managing and have to push forward. I'm really, really involved in our outside counsel diversity program. The legal department also internally, globally, kind of is embarking on a new strategy. And so, you know, those kind of project things. So your day is filled with meetings, lots and lots and lots of meetings, going from, now it's Zoom meetings. It used to be kind of going from, you know, conference room to conference room. Now it's jumping off Zoom call to the next Zoom call. And then being ready to kind of drop all of that or figure out how to manage all of that if there's an emergency situation that comes up. And that happens obviously in litigation all the time.
Yes, it does. So what are the things you like best, and what are the things you like least about your current position?
So like best, certainly, you know, I really do love collaborating with the other folks in the legal department within litigation and, you know, outside the commercial lawyers, our IP lawyers, regulatory, other HR compliance lawyers, and working together to solve problems, right, for the company. At the end of the day, that's our job, is to help our company continue to do its business and what it does, and you know, create the products and sell its services. And legal needs to kind of not be a roadblock to that. And there are times when we have to be, you know, hopefully that's rare, where you tell a business client you can't do something because of some law or regulation or the risk that it creates. But really what I love is working with the client to solve a particular problem. And for litigation, you know, a lot of times I say all the time, there's no one really in the company that likes litigation except for me and my team, right? And a handful of other people. It's not our business. You know, when you're at a law firm, you know, that's your bread and butter, you know, as a litigator. I mean, your time is the revenue, right, for the law firm. Here, in-house, we're more often than not a cost center. And so we are trying to work with our clients to deal with whatever problem that they're dealing with. And often we're on the defense side, right? We're a chemical company, so we're getting sued a lot. And so managing that risk, minimizing that risk, mitigating that risk as best that we can, managing the cost over that. And then once in a while, you know, we're lucky or excited to participate in proactive litigation, right? Some plaintiff side litigation where, you know, it's really important. We just came off, and I see one of my colleagues, I think he's still on the call, Joe Munjali, who's an IP lawyer. The two of us and another litigator colleague just came off of a trial in Delaware where we were the plaintiff, and we had a great win. And so, you know, the things like that happen kind of keep your juices flowing and are really, really exciting. And so that's what keeps me going, and that's what I like the best. What I like the least, you know, again, as you progress in your career in-house, a lot of it is more administration, it's more kind of budget management, it's more HR management, things like that. And, you know, you feel a little bit further removed from the actual day-to-day, you know, kind of solving the problems.
So what kind of tips would you give to someone who is looking to follow a similar path along and ultimately, you know, reach a position of Deputy General Counsel or beyond? What kind of things would you recommend they be doing?
So I think if you are, you know, if you're already in-house, I think you want, which I think most of the folks on this call are already in-house. So you want to, I think, get as broad an experience as you can within that role, right? And so volunteer for other things or projects that might be a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Certainly create and build those relationships with your colleagues. It's not, you know, I only know BASF, but from what I hear from colleagues, legal departments are not silos, right? Being kind of collaborative and working cross-functionally. And if you're working for a global corporation, right, being able to work cross-border with your colleagues overseas is really, really critical. And I don't think you make it very far in an in-house legal department by keeping your head down and just, you know, you need to do a good job. Obviously, that's kind of a bare minimum. But you can't just keep your head down and do a good job. I think you really have to put yourself out there and kind of get involved in, you know, different projects and initiatives and volunteer your time and put yourself out there, because if your in-house department is anything like ours, we are very resource constrained, right? We don't have the ability to bring on resources when work needs to get done. And so if folks volunteer to do things and help out on different projects, you know, that's going to be kind of noticed and appreciated.
So would you say that's probably the single best way to help a corporate counsel stand out in their firm, in their company?
Yeah, I think it really, I think it is working, you know, trying to build relationships across the board, you know, in the legal department, in other areas of the legal department, with your business clients. The soft skills when you're in-house, I think, are incredibly important, right? You don't get, at BASF, we only hire folks who are at least, you know, I want to say 7, 8, 9 years, right, experience out of law school, typically coming from a law firm, or maybe already have some in-house experience. So we're only hiring experienced folks who have, you know, the right expertise. And so in order, I think, to kind of develop and progress, it's those soft skills. It's really, how are you able to communicate? How, you know, are you responsive to your clients? Do you know, basically play well in the sandbox? Do you work well with others? Because just like you encounter folks in a law firm who don't necessarily work well with others, you encounter folks like that in-house too. And I think that's what you want to try to avoid. You can really go a long way just by, being kind of a good colleague and a good person to work with.
It's a good rule of thumb in all cases, I think, Sneha. Play nice with
I think
others.
so.
So were there any aspects of the culture or individuals or the structure of BASF that you think were helpful to you along your career path?
Say that again, Stacey. What do you mean by that?
Were there any individuals who maybe took you under their wing, or was there sort of a structure or a culture at BASF that you think helped you along your career path, or was it more just making sure that you're contributing and that you're a team player?
Yeah, no, I think certainly I don't think anyone kind of is able to progress anywhere, right? Whether a law firm or an in-house legal department or, in any other job without having kind of mentors and sponsors and people who are invested in your career. And early on, I was able to because a year after I started at BASF, the head of litigation had left. I was very quickly, and this was now 2 general counsel ago, I was very quickly able to interact directly with the general counsel right at the time and have that direct line that I may not have otherwise. And so, having that relationship and taking the time to build that relationship, right, being responsive to what that general counsel needed and wanted in terms of results or communications or whatever it may be, a lot of what I see my job as, and I did from an early start, and I still do today, is making the job of others around me easier, right? Whether it's my boss or my clients or my colleagues, I want to make other people's jobs easier. And so I think doing that kind of helped, obviously build that relationship with my general counsel at the time. And so, he gave me increasingly more responsibility. So by the time the next general counsel came, I was in that position to have that direct interaction. And then did the same thing, frankly, was able to, make myself, I think a valuable member of that general counsel's team, not just from the, kind of litigation work, but from the other things that I supported. And, I think that obviously played a tremendous role in kind of helping me advance my career.
Do you think, as Deputy General Counsel for Litigation, that there are certain skills or business acumen that it sounds like yes, the answer is yes, based on what you've already said, that there are certain business acumen and skills that you need at your level that you didn't need in some of the other positions you've held? And how would you recommend, so what are those and how would you recommend people obtain those? Sneha, did we lose you?
Okay, so yeah.
Are you back? I think you're back.
I think we're having a little technical difficulty here. Let's just wait a second.
No, am I here? You were breaking up and
Yeah.
There you are.
Okay, hey, Stacey, can you hear me?
I can, yes, yeah. I'm sorry. Did you
Okay.
hear me, Sneha? You want me to repeat it?
Sorry, I think I'm having some internet problems.
It's the,
Okay,
the
am I
Zoom-
good?
The Zoom world we live in. Yes, you sound terrific.
Oh.
So are there certain leadership skills, business acumen that that you use now in your current position you didn't need in some other positions? And how would you recommend someone go about obtaining those types of skills and experience? Oh. I think we lost Sneha.
Okay, we did lose Sneha, but what we'll do, I think she's back.
She's
There we go.
back.
Okay, let
There
me
she is.
spotlight her. There we go.
I was afraid that was going to happen. I don't know what's going on. So I think Stacey, if I heard the question, was kind of how did I develop maybe some of the business kind of acumen or skills? So I actually did, obviously coming from litigation and not maybe the corporate background, that wasn't always readily, kind of part of the skills that I brought to the table. I was a business major undergrad, so I kind of had, fundamental, at least understandings of, financial statements and things like that. From a litigation perspective, I do have to, and my team, we do work with our accounting group a lot and our auditors a lot on litigation reserves and things like that. And so I did take some courses. Frankly, I took kind of, finance for dummies or whatever kind of course that was through various CLEs or through PLI, or there are law firms that offered that, just again, to get, a better understanding of what my clients are worried about, right, to their bottom line, and thinking about, for example, when you're talking about a settlement and what's that impact, or a settlement that's in the future, and what's the impact on the net present value, and what does all that mean, and how does that affect the company's decision making. And so some of that I went externally to try to learn those skills, and some of it, frankly, you do kind of learn a lot as you go along, right? And I learned from my colleagues. That's what I love about being in-house, is that you have a whole department of experts who are really, really smart people and experienced people. And, I'm never afraid to go into someone's office in the good old days and kind of knock on the door and say, hey, I don't understand this. Can you help me? The same way I welcome other folks coming into my office and saying, hey, I know the client has X litigation going on. What does that mean? What are the implications? I don't understand this. So, a lot of it is learning on the job, but some of it is kind of going external and trying to figure out where are your gaps and finding ways to learn.
So is the majority of the BASF legal team, litigation and beyond, all in the same space in Florham Park, New Jersey?
That's where our US headquarters are, in Florham Park. So most are in Florham Park, but we have large groups of folks in RTP, North Carolina, in Michigan, in Texas, in California, and other places. But most folks, the general counsel and his leadership team, and a lot of other lawyers are in Florham Park.
So has COVID impacted, beyond the obvious, impacted the way in which you've been able to interact with your colleagues, both in New Jersey and, I guess, in North Carolina and elsewhere?
Yeah, well, so obviously in our home office, it's impacted it greatly, because we're only back in the office now, 1 to 2 to 3 days a week, and people are there at different times, right? When I'm in on a Monday, my other colleagues may not be in. And so that kind of organic way of just kind of bumping into someone in the hall or popping by someone's office and just saying, hey, do you have a couple of minutes to chat, just doesn't happen. And I think we all miss that. I know that's law firms miss that because of, the ability to develop, especially, and mentor your younger associates. But I certainly miss that kind of collegiality and collaboration that came being face-to-face with folks in-house. The flip side, though, I think, is for folks who are in other offices, I think it's been better, right? Because now, frankly, everyone is on a video call versus before, where you would have most of the people in Florham Park are in the room, and those who are not in the room are just listening on video, not even video. At the time, we were just dialing in on audio conference, right? And people can't hear, there are side conversations. And so I think that has made it much better. It's made it more inclusive because everyone's kind of on that same level playing field of being able to participate in conversations. And I think going forward, kind of, we have to figure out a way to keep, get the best of that old world where you can still have that in-person interaction and keep the best of this kind of new virtual world where everyone has the ability to feel included and be a active part of different meetings.
Are there other benefits or downsides to COVID that you've experienced in the legal department?
Yeah, I think people just have the opportunity to participate in more things, right? And I think things can happen at a faster pace, whereas before, and this is in, frankly, litigation as well, right? Whereas before, you'd have to work around people's schedules, right? To schedule an in-person meeting, or even all these types of Zoom calls and conferences and panel discussions. You'd have to travel to places, and that, wasn't always easy on people's schedules. The fact that you can do it via video kind of makes it more efficient, makes it frankly cheaper, right? Especially dealing with our outside counsel, meetings that we would have otherwise had people in person. And again, that is still important, and we still are trying to do that. But, I think there's a good blend of both. And I think that's definitely here to stay. I think that's a positive.
So are there COVID challenges that the company that are new, that the company is facing as a result of COVID that have landed in the legal department, sort of uniquely COVID challenges for the company?
Well, I think and it's not in my group. Thank God I don't envy the HR lawyers in our group who have to kind of, deal with the return to work, vaccine mandates, all of that. I mean, we were, BASF is, a manufacturing company as well. So throughout the entire pandemic, when lots of things were shut down, there were lots of our sites that were not in, all over the country, because we were an essential business for a lot of things. And we shifted a lot of our business to making, things like hand sanitizers and other, products that were needed for the pandemic response. And so there was a balance that, especially our HR lawyers have had to kind of try to figure out, right, with all the different state laws and regulations, and headquarters in New Jersey, but our main sites are in Louisiana and Texas and Michigan. And so how does that all kind of balance? And so they're still dealing with that. I mean, now there's vaccine mandates. Do we do it? Do we not do it? And again, I'm glad that doesn't fall on me. We have not had any actual COVID related litigation where we've been sued for, any exposure to COVID or anything COVID related, knock on wood. We haven't had any of that. So from a pure litigation perspective, the biggest effect that COVID has had obviously was for a long time, in-person hearings in courts or jury trials and things like that weren't happening. And that was put off. I think we pivoted pretty quickly, as did a lot of the courts, to doing a lot of things via Zoom or virtual hearings. I remember back in March 2020, when everything shut down, the week after, we had a major mediation in one of our MDLs, a product liability MDL, and we were all supposed to go to St. Louis to do it. And, some people were still willing to go, some weren't. Our general counsel from Germany was not allowed to fly here. And so we had to kind of figure out how to pivot and do that. We didn't want to lose the momentum and put off the mediation. And so we did it via Zoom, and it worked. And so, and we've had a virtual trial. We also had an in-person trial recently. So, again, I think we're adjusting to trying to figure out how to keep things virtual in ways that make sense, like hearings and maybe some oral arguments and appellate arguments. But, jury trials, I really do think we need to be in person. I think those are very tough to do virtually.
Yeah, seems like they're coming back slowly across the country. So yeah. Any words of wisdom for other corporate counsel dealing with COVID related ways to get through the COVID times?
I think it's important to continue to stay connected, right? To me, not just from a work perspective, but socially with your colleagues. A lot of what, kind of what I love about BASF obviously is a lot of the work, but it's the people. And what I miss about not being around the people and my colleagues is that ability to kind of just interact on a social level. And so, from the start of the pandemic, we kind of had with certain groups of friends of mine at BASF, this kind of weekly happy hour, that we would do just to kind of stay connected. And I think this isn't over, right? And so you still need to find those ways to stay connected, and then shut off at a certain point, shut that computer off. Don't just, kind of walk away from it. But when I have a handle on my day, I shut it down. I log off. I shut it down so it's not so easy just to kind of run back and, look at your emails when you should be having dinner with your family. I mean, you don't have that natural break, but you have to kind of do things in your day to give yourself that. And none of this is words of wisdom. I mean, we've all been dealing with this for 18 months. The one thing I have not done that was the advice early on, which is right, make sure you get dressed every day as if you're going to work. I don't do that. I'm still wearing, my sweatpants with my nice top and sweater. So it's whatever works for you, for sure. But there's no, I don't know that we'll ever get back to the way it was before, right? So you have to, again, figure out what works for you, and just try to maintain that separation.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's probably quite a few things from this experience that are going to linger, and I think business casual is never going to be the same again. So,
Yeah.
So Sneha, I want to pivot to talk to you a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion before we're going to take some questions. So I know these are issues you've been passionate about for as long as I've known you. How do you define the difference between diversity, equity, and inclusion?
And I'm gonna kind of screw up this quote, right? But I forget who said it. But kind of diversity is, inviting people to the party or inviting people to the dance, and kind of inclusion is asking them to dance, right? So diversity is really only half of it. And I think that the business case for diversity, hopefully we don't have to sell that anymore, right? I don't think you have to kind of make that case anymore for why diversity is important, not only frankly from a legal department, right? What I am very heavily involved in our outside counsel diversity program, so I don't have to sell that anymore to our outside counsel as to why you should give us diverse teams. I think at least the outside counsel that we work with get it. But the inclusion piece, I think still is missing, which is why it's so important for, I think, in-house counsel to really partner with our law firms. I really feel strongly that we can't just tell our law firms, this is what we want from you. This is where you're deficient. This is where you need to do better. Go off and do it and come back to us in a year. We do these kind of yearly surveys and scorecards. You go fix it and come back to us in a year. I don't think that's the right way to approach DE&I with our law firms. I feel very strongly that we have to have partnerships with our law firms. We have to work with them. We have to give them opportunities to their, more junior associates. We have to be willing to say, hey, you have an excellent senior associate who's diverse. Let them do that oral argument. Let them lead, take that lead deposition or whatever it may be, instead of falling to what we're comfortable with, which is have the relationship partner do it. Have the, typically the senior white man who's been our relationship partner for the last 20, 30 years. He's the one who has the experience. He's the one who's been doing our work. We want to fall back to him. We have to be okay with giving those opportunities to folks, because otherwise, at a law firm, if you don't give those opportunities to your associates, how will they ever get to that point 20, 30 years from now? And so the same way, we try to do it in-house, right, is to give people in-house, to the extent you can, different opportunities on things that they can work on. We have to be willing to do that with our outside law firms as well. And that, I think that builds more of the inclusion piece, right, where kind of your associates and your other attorneys of color and women attorneys will feel like they have more at stake, right, with a client relationship, when you're giving them kind of real opportunities and real work to do.
So in your department, is that an issue? Is that something that, the expectation is a thoughtful decision on who we're going to partner with particular cases, and then sort of an engagement, an affirmative engagement with the firm to make sure that these types of opportunities are being given? Yeah,
I mean, from the very beginning of the retention process or the RFP process of who we're considering for our work, and this is true in litigation and other areas of the legal department, it's written into our processes that we are looking for diverse teams, and that, we're asking those questions about who on the team is diverse. We signed on 2 years ago to Mansfield certification for in-house departments. So it's part of, again, what we are looking at and measuring and tracking in terms of who our outside counsel are. And then it's really, it's not so much just a DE&I initiative to be engaged with your outside counsel. That's just kind of how we at BASF manage our matters with our outside counsel. We are not a hands-off legal department where, you give something to outside counsel and you let them run with it. We are very, very engaged in strategy, in, every kind of step of the way with our witnesses, in figuring out how we should frame something to a court, in, figuring out early on an early case assessment. What's our end game? What are the goals of the business unit? We in-house counsel have to stay actively engaged in that. And so that's part of the partnership we have with our outside counsel already. And then the diversity piece obviously is a core part of that as well.
So Sneha, I could talk to you about DEI for the rest of the time and probably keep going, but it looks like we have all kinds of questions popping up. So I'm going to let Tara jump in.
Sure. Let me put myself on video for a second. Sneha, internally, we've received a couple of questions. In short, what is the best advice that you've received thus far when you were taking on the next step in your career?
Oh, geez. I think as lawyers, and I know myself specifically, I'm a very type A personality, and I like to do things. Perfection is always a goal, right? And I think in-house, when you're, kind of working on different things and trying to expose yourself to different areas and push yourself, you can't be afraid to fail. And that's really hard. That's really hard for me personally. It's really hard to tell lawyers, right? Don't be afraid to fail, because, we're taught to get things exactly right the first time and all the time. And so I think, that's kind of part of the advice, which is I've let go of a lot of that need to be perfect in everything. And frankly, to be the one to know all the answers. That's something in-house. You can't know all the answers, nor should you know all the answers, because if you're the only one who's, kind of engaged with a client giving the answers, odds are you're not the expert in everything, right? So you have to be willing to admit, which was, I never wanted to do as an associate. I was always afraid to do as an associate at a law firm, but you have to be willing to admit that I don't know that. And you know what? I don't know that. And I'm going to bring in so-and-so and so-and-so who does know that. And we as a team are going to help you. And so kind of, I think developing in my career, being able to let go of that need to be kind of perfect and realize that I have to rely on and collaborate with my colleagues, I think is good advice that I received. And I think good advice for others.
In making the decision about taking that next big leap, in your case, you've moved in many different directions throughout your career, but how do you know when it's the right time? And how did you, for you, how did you know it was the right time? How about we go with that?
So again, I only was at one law firm and one in-house job. And so the leap from law firm to in-house, frankly, it was either kind of stay at the law firm and try to be a partner, which that path I knew was not one I wanted to take, or it was go in-house. And I was willing to, I was willing to take that chance because I knew I talked to enough people that I knew it would open a lot of other doors for me, right? So I think one piece of advice, and again, people are already in-house, I think, on this call, but one piece of advice I give to lots of associates at law firms, and it may hold true for folks who are maybe more junior in their careers in-house, is don't wait for that perfect job. So if you're in-house already and you're looking for that next kind of job leap, you may not find the perfect job for you. And I'm glad I didn't wait to find the perfect in-house job. It ended up being a great job. I've been here for almost 15 years, right? So clearly I really enjoy it here. But my initial kind of, I don't know the company, it's a chemical industry. I don't know, chemistry was my worst subject. Like, I don't, I'm not a science person, all that kind of stuff. I'm glad I didn't listen to that. I'm glad I kind of took that leap because, it just, my job is so much more than that. And I'm so glad I took that leap. So, you may not get that perfect opportunity to come along, but don't let perfection or the desire for perfection get in the way of challenging yourself and, trying to broaden your horizons into what may come in your career.
Okay, we've got another one. How do you reconcile corporate America's forward march on DE&I issues with increasing racial violence and voting rights restrictions on the national scale? Wow, that's a loaded question.
That's a big question.
Good luck with that, Sneha.
I'm interested to hear what you guys think. I don't know that I reconcile it, frankly, right? I think it's, it's tough. And this is just me speaking personally as me, not as a representative of my company or anything like that. I am, politically speaking, I am, progressive, I'm a liberal, and a lot of that. And so on social issues, voting rights and all this stuff, I kind of lean a certain way. And it's tough for me personally to reconcile that with what the corporate position is on different things, right? And what, who the corporation may want to support because it's better for corporate America. That, that's tough. And I don't know that I have an answer to that. Other than internally, I try, through the DE&I initiatives or through, other initiatives internally to push just a little bit and get maybe the corporation to, we've done in the past, signed on to amicus briefs of, different issues in the Supreme Court, whether it's directly or through a trade association. It's kind of taking a stand, maybe making a public statement on something that normally, the company would not want to make. And again, we're a company, our parent is a German company. And so there's even an additional kind of level of being a little bit, risk averse in getting mired into the politics, especially in the US, especially these last several years. And so, there are times when you just have to say my corporate life is to serve my client, right? It's to serve the company. And that may not always mesh with what I do personally, which is why in my personal life, I may go protest and march. And I've done that, and you should do that. You should express yourself in your personal life. But, there are times when you may have to kind of keep that separate.
Is that a hard, I guess, as a follow-up question, this is just for me. So personally, how do you in-house, and I'm not in-house, but just as a question, how do you effectively separate the political side of yourself or your actual background from what is essentially your professional background?
Yeah, I've become good just in the course of my life at compartmentalizing. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? It's the same thing as I just try to separate my professional work from my personal life of being, kind of a mom and a wife. There are times when you just have to shut it off, right? And you just have to kind of push one part of your life to the side. Because for me, again, this is just me, if I always let everything swirl around in my head all the time, I think I would be a pretty miserable person. And so that being said, if I ever thought the company was doing something really fundamentally that, was wrong or that I didn't agree with or took some path that I just couldn't get behind, and as lawyers, we have to face that from a legal perspective. If the company took some legal course of action that you didn't agree with or you advised against, we're told you kind of you may have to step down, right? And that may be something that you have to do as part of your professional obligations. So from a personal point of view, if I really felt strongly that the company was doing something that I didn't agree with, I think that's probably what I would do. I would probably, go find something else to do. But again, I try as hard as I can internally with the relationships that I've built, right, with the general counsel, with folks in the legal department, with the C-suite here in the US, right, because I've been here for 15 years. working directly with the C-suite to kind of make my opinion known and my view known to the extent that I think it benefits the company.
We have another question, and I think that's all we'll have time for. Have you thought about non-legal roles? If you have some insights for others who've made the switch to business or other functional roles?
That's a very good question, because again, in-house, there are, my boss is a general counsel. So the next level up, for me in the legal department is general counsel. And, you don't know if that's going to happen, how that happens, when that happens. There are lots of folks who have gone from being lawyers at BASF to being in business roles. That certainly does happen. I haven't thought about it, just because I really do enjoy being a lawyer and being a litigator. And so, I really do enjoy that aspect of it. But if that's something that is interesting to you on a career path, I think that's frankly something that if you were at BASF, I would advise you to say, talk to your manager about it. Talk to, your general counsel or someone in HR about how you can get those skills. A lot of in-house legal departments do secondments, right? So it's kind of a shorter term. We do, shorter term stint in a different group. We do delegations at BASF, so you can go overseas and do a delegation in the legal department somewhere else, or in the business, or in say EH&S or compliance or some other functional role. And then, then you're on a path to potentially other things in the company. So depending on your company and what they have, I think there are lots of opportunities to explore that, but you have to kind of make that known, right? Hopefully you have a development conversation every year with your manager. And I think that's a time where you should make that known.
So Sneha, I'm jealous. That sounds really exciting, actually.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of folks in our legal department who've taken advantage of the delegation aspect to go kind of live somewhere else. It's really, that's what my prior general counsel is in Germany now as the head of all of legal. And he's been there for 3 years and he's going to be there for another 4 years. Moved his whole family there, which obviously has its own challenges, right? It's not easy for everyone to do.
True. Well, I think, Tara, we've run out of time. And so the rest of my questions will have to wait. Sneha, I'll ask you when I come to New Jersey next time.
Absolutely.
I'm going to turn it over to Samir to close out and let you know about our additional exciting corporate counsel events that are coming up this month. So Samir, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tara. I'm thrilled to have had these incredible speakers have such an important dialogue today, and we are very excited to have all of you come to attend this event. This is part, as Tara just mentioned, of our Corporate Counsel series, Corporate Counsel College series. And upcoming this month, we have several events that I'll point you to. We have a Birds of a Feather event for anybody who's interested in networking. And that is on November 9th from 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Time and 9 to 10 a.m. Pacific Time. We have a chat with Ashwin Krishnan, who is the General Counsel of Miami Marlins. And we're really excited about that one as well. That'll be on November 30th, a Wednesday at 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern. And I guess that's, somebody will double check me on that, but I believe that would be 9 to 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific, but I may have gotten that wrong. But we look forward to joining with you on those events and other SOP events in the future. If anybody here is interested in talking with us about corporate counsel programming and what you'd like to see from this going forward, especially for the Corporate Counsel College, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, to Tara Raghavan, or to Mona Shah, all of whom are on the call. And you should be able to easily find our contact information. And we look forward to seeing you in future events. Stacy and Sneha, thank you again for such a wonderful talk.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And happy Diwali, everyone.
One thing we'd also like to thank our Corporate Counsel College sponsor for this event, Carlton Fields. Stacy, thank you so much for taking the time to develop questions. We really, really appreciate your efforts. And Sneha, always wonderful to see you talk, but even better this time because we got it one-on-one. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
All right,
Bye all.
bye.